Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. Listeners, here we go again. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Life's Essential Ingredients. And every time I get the good fortune of doing this show, I just kind of got to pinch myself. It's incredible to interview people from all over the world. And we just want to say thanks to our guests and thanks to the listeners for tuning in. Can't believe we've had listeners in 40 countries and about 600 cities. And so we just really want to send a heartfelt thank you. Mike is not here today, but we are ready. And we are season 3, episode 19 with Branch Isole coming from Arkansas. And before we get into that, I did want to give a quick shout out to C4 Leaders, which is the nonprofit arm of this show. And we are the only nonprofit to utilize the pizza making process to create space for our companions to be seen, heard, and loved. We also write children's books, obviously host this podcast, and use the most amazing, and I will say that again, amazing handmade, hand-tossed sourdough pizza to bring out the best in each other. So check out pizzadays.org to support our important work. So first of all, where you can find our guest, and that's just the best place is just through his website. And it's BranchIsole.com. And about our guest, he is the author of 22 books. Branch writes and speaks about how choice and consequence support personal growth. Branch is a storyteller who harnesses the power of truth in reducing daily stress, struggles, and conflicts. Branch is also a poet who has identified essential keys to establish balance for life-work relationships. Known worldwide for his short stories, Branch has also had successful careers in teaching, corporate sales and marketing, and entrepreneurship. Branch, thanks for sharing your gift with the world, and thanks for being our guest on Life's Essential Ingredients. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate your time. Love being with you today. I've been looking forward to this. Yeah,
me too. And Mike and I started this during COVID, really as a way for us to connect, but more so to try and just help one person. And so always that one person has been me. So don't get it twisted if you see my head kind of going down, because I take lots of notes during the show. And it's been such an honor for me to interview incredible guests. And thanks again. So we always start each episode with a thought of the day. And it's a quote that after researching you that I pick, and we're 100%. So the pressure is all on me, but we're over 100 and probably 20, 25 episodes. And we've had 100% success with the guest saying, hey, the quote definitely resonates with him. And it's from Viktor Frankl. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Why would I pick that one for you?
Wow, that's a great one. I know Viktor Frankl's work, and the interesting thing about his story and the book that he had written is the power that we have inside to survive. As he tells his story in the concentration camps and how that experience beat down the Jews who were incarcerated there. The theme of that story is when you get to that place in your life, nothing else truly matters except that core of survival. You sort of replace all of your other wants and needs and desires that you thought were so important in your life at one time. And you get down to that core essence of who am I and what does that mean to my life, whatever is left in my life. And so that's when we reach deep down inside to remember that connection that we have outside of our physical being. And, that's such a great quote from him, because it boils down the essence of who we are and why we're here. and it brings us back to that connection to God and that relationship that we often put on the back burner, and yet it's the core of who we actually are in this life. And I appreciate that quote so much. It resonates with me because, like a lot of people, my journey had me on one path where I was very successful, but I became very disillusioned, not only with, what I was doing in the world, but who I actually was. And so, like so many people, especially on podcasts, who share their stories of the old them and then the new them and the adversities that they went through to bring them to this place, everyone has sort of a Horatio Alger story where they started out at one place struggling, conflicted, a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. And out of that negative energy from that life comes that rebirth. And you find yourself, in a new place, but for a whole new reason.
I love it. Well, we're going to explore all that and then some. And I think starting out this show, and I'm obviously familiar with the work that you do and how you bring people together. And I got to ask, is your name your given name, or is that like a nickname? Branch.
Yeah, that's a great question. No, it's not my given name. It was a name that I took on as I was, in this journey. I got to midlife and I realized that all of the things that I had felt or thought were important to me actually had produced nothing for me in my life except adversity, and to show me, what a scoundrel and what a cad I had been. And so I decided to change my life. And with that decision came a decision to change my name as well. And so that's how that came about. It was not my given name, but it was my rebirth name when I changed my life and my direction.
I love it. And I'm fascinated with that a little bit. Did you officially change your name, or is it just something that you just, hey, everybody call me Branch?
No, I officially changed it. I had, I had been on the world's path and embraced the world's ways wholeheartedly, and what I found from that experience and that path was I was not the person that I wanted to be, and I knew I had to change my life. So I knew I was going into a spiritual mode, in a search for truth mode. And so I knew I needed to change my life, and I wanted my last name to be Isole, which my thought was, it's got to be that because I want to serve only the Lord Emmanuel. And then I came to find out it is a real word. And in Italian, it means an island, a single isle. And in French, it means solo or alone. And that pretty well described where I was and where I was going. So I changed my name, and I thought, I like the name Joshua for my first name. And for some reason, for 2 years, I didn't do anything about it. I was inactive. I knew my last name was going to be Isole. And I liked the name Joshua, but it just wouldn't come to be. And so I was living in Hawaii, and I was doing a Bible study with a young couple one day. And I opened up the Bible. I looked down. I was at Zechariah 3:8, which says, I will raise up Joshua, my branch. And at that moment, the Lord told me that was my new name. And so that's how the name came about. And so Branch is my first name, Isole, or Isole, I serve only Lord Emmanuel, is my last name. And I legally changed it to be that. And that was, 25, almost 30 years ago.
Man, what a great story. And I don't know if cleansing is the right word, but just a cleansing action to take for you to get clarity on who you are, and then to live your life that way. So I love it. Yeah, I just saw, obviously a religious person, and I saw that name Branch, and I knew there had to. I only listened to one podcast on you, and nobody brought that up. But I was like, there's got to be a story behind that name. And then now to hear all this, the last thing I'll say, how did I don't know if you have any family. How did your family take to you changing your name?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like I tell people when a woman gets married, she takes her husband's last name, right? Even if she keeps her maiden name and hyphenates it. So it's just a name change. But yeah, they were I don't want to say they weren't shook up, but they were a little disoriented. They eventually came around, but it was a struggle. They didn't want to go there for whatever reason. My sister often slips still and calls me, by the name that we grew up with. But they get around, and it wasn't so much my family, but a lot of other people that I knew, really had a question about it. I've kept in touch with a couple of people from high school, and you can hear it in their voice when we talk. There's still this tentativeness of, I don't know about this name change thing, but people come around. It's a matter of habit, and they get used to the new name. But it's fun to watch their eyes and watch the brain calculating what they're now thinking. So change. People resist change for whatever reason, but that's what life is about. It's about change and about growth, and about becoming a newer or a better me, a better you. And that's the way we move forward. And, those who embrace that change, whether it's a new name or a new life or a new path, your eyes become open to not only the new way you look at things, but the old way you used to see your life in the world. And that recognition of who I once was and what I believed, and who I now am and what I believe, enables, the embracing of new and different. And so it works for me. And the name always has never been a struggle for me. And those who I love, and care about, they've come around. It takes them, my mother never would come around, but, she's a whole different generation.
Yeah. Well, no, I love it. Appreciate it. Thank you for sharing the story with me and the listeners. And it's going to be a great episode. And I like to usually start off, and you kind of danced around it a little bit, but what was life like growing up? And you can take that all the way back to wherever you want, or, more recent, but just get the listeners a chance to get to know you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That's always an interesting, the path is changing at all times. I grew up in the 50s and 60s. I was a military family. We moved around quite a lot, lived in different countries and different cities. For me, it was a great opportunity. I embraced it. I was exposed to a lot of different cultures and languages and people. We moved literally every 3 to 4 years. So you never put down roots too long. And in those moves, especially through school, you got to be around a lot of different kinds of people. And so for me, that was a real growth opportunity. After college, I went into the corporate world, was in sales and marketing for a number of years in the corporate scenario, and did very well. I was very successful. But like I say, I became very disillusioned in the things that I was doing for that success. And as a result of that, I decided I needed to change my life. And my struggle was basically with truth. I grew up in a what I call C-E-N-O Christian home, that is Christmas, Easter, and occasionally. We were Christians in name only. Basically, I didn't know anything about Christianity, but that's what we claimed. And so I didn't have a religious background in terms of I'm all in. So my search was initially for truth. I needed to find out because I had been so untruthful in my corporate life. I wanted to find out, why I was that way. And that had me looking for what does truth actually look like in my life. And so that led me on a 5-year journey of exploration of different religions, different spiritual belief systems, mysticism, Eastern philosophies, all of those kinds of things. And the interesting part of the journey was all of those at their core brought me back to the same place. And in all of the scriptures of all the religions that I was reading and studying, the core was the same two things: love God first and most, and treat other people the way you want to be treated. And so with this core tenet becoming the obvious grounding or the taproot of belief, it brought me back to Christianity, back to Christ, back to a new relationship and a search for Christ. And so that put me on a spiritual path. So I was on a new path, 180 degrees different than the one I had been living. And so at midlife, I decided, okay, I need to know more about this. So I need to go back to school. So at 50, in my midlife crisis, instead of buying a new Corvette or, running off to a beach someplace, I went back to school. And so I got a master's in theology. And then along with my studies came this impetus and desire to write a book. And so I wrote my first book, which is called God, I Believe. And it's basically a layman's comparative study of the world's different religions. And out of that book came my next book. And in that book, I decided, okay, well, I'm going to write a short story. And I wrote that story. And then subsequently, thoughts for stories just started tumbling out. And now 22 books and 25 years later, here we are.
What a great story. Let's just get into the books then real quick. And, I know there's 22 of them, so we're not going to be able to touch on them all. But do you have a favorite that you wrote and you're like, oh man, this one just really, I feel so good about it. And whether it's successful or not, but I'm a children's book author. I only have 2 books and I'm writing 3 more. Then I'm going to do 1 adult book. But so I can't imagine what it is doing 22 books, but I can understand a tiny little bit of having 2. And so, do you have a favorite and why?
That's a great question. And I get that question a lot. And my answer is my favorite book is my next one. The one that hasn't come out yet. And the reason I say that is because as a writer, as an author, I can look back now and I can see the growth that's happened in how I express things and in my stories and those kind of things. So that for me is sort of the reward of writing, is to see the growth that's happened and the growth that's taken place, both in my stories and how they're presented, how the reader relates to them. I write basically fiction and nonfiction. I have 18 nonfiction books, short stories, poetry, dealing with lots of different life issues. I write for adults, so I deal with a lot of issues that, everybody has experienced either firsthand or through a family member or somebody at work. But these are issues that sometimes, people don't like to talk about for whatever reason. But I deal with those kinds of life issues. Then I have a set of books that are for the Christian market, or the fallen away Christian market. And of course, the theme of those is spiritual grounding and spiritual strength. And so having that kind of division, I'm trying to relate to 2 different audiences that actually have a lot of cross reference and cross kind of experiences, because, we're people and people experience basically the same kind of fundamental life lessons over and over, no matter who we are, no matter where we live, no matter what time of history we've lived in. Those life lessons that we experience are the core of this thing called life, right? And so my favorite book, has to be actually my first one, because it deals with so many people who are in that space of feeling, there's something missing in my life. I don't know what it is. I'm struggling with my relationships at home, my relationships at work. What is the missing link? And so many of us discover that missing link is this idea of spiritual grounding and spiritual strength. And yet all we know is whatever we learned as children, or whatever, spiritual belief system or religion we were raised in. And that causes a lot of questions for people. So this book looks at all the different spiritual belief systems and asks each one the same 10 questions. And from those 10 answers, it gives the reader a chance to see, what does Buddhism say about this? What does Judaism say about this? What does Islam say about this particular question? And the idea is for the reader to then be able to judge for themselves what path they may want to choose going forward, right? Yeah, I am a believing Christian, and that's the ultimate theme of those who read it and are interested in Christianity. But I have a lot of people come to me, especially people who are considering Buddhism, and I'm a big fan of Buddha. And I say, okay, well, tell me about Buddhism. And they don't know anything about Buddhism, right? So how are you going to choose to walk that path if your knowledge is so limited? And so that's the point of the book. It gives people those first steps to understand, well, this is what Buddhism is about. This is what Christianity is about. This is what Judaism is about, right? This is what the atheist thinks about these same 10 questions. And from that description and that explanation, then it gives that person who's seeking and searching the foundation that they can then say, okay, this looks like the path that I'm interested in based on, what I believe inside right now. And so that's the idea of the book. And I guess that's got to be my favorite, because it allows people to make that choice for themselves, to start to answer that question that all of us at some point in our life come to ask. And that is, is there a God? What's that about? And what does it mean for me?
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm going to hit you up off the air. A lot of times it's why I love this show, and I'm just going to throw it out right now, but we'll talk about it when we're done. Is I definitely would love one of those books. A lot of times we do a little exchange with the guests, and another thing that I love about doing this show. But you mentioned truth a few times, and what does that mean? How would you personally define that? And I know you've also used the word seeking several times, and I'm guessing those two words go somewhat hand in hand, but define truth and let's explore that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a terrific question. So often in our lives, and particularly in our relationships, we get into situations where we're struggling. And so many times, depending again on how we grew up and all of those things that we brought with us, we sometimes find that there is my truth and there's your truth, and then there's the truth. And my truth, in most instances, is a belief based on my perception of things and my attitude that sort of manipulates or molds or makes that perception real to me. And so if we understand that every response and action that we have is grounded in attitude, belief, and perception, that's what formulates for me what truth appears to me to be, right? But when we get into a situation with another person, and again, this is so important in personal relationships, when we are struggling with that person who we claim to care most about, and we say that we're going to be most honest and open with and most vulnerable with, so that they can know truly who we are as a person, because we're sharing our time and our involvement and our life with them. It's interesting how many times my truth is different than that person's truth, than my wife's truth. And so that division, that divide, that wedge between us only exacerbates whatever the issue is that we are trying to confront, right? So when we look at truth, for me, the ultimate make or break about truth is simply this. We come into the world as newborn babes, and we become malleable to our environment, right? We grow up in a family, and we take on our family's viewpoints and structure and tradition. And so about age 2, we start to understand what the word no means. And as we grow with this concept of no, we often start to realize that no means punishment, right? And so we grow up and we go to school, and everything that we are exposed to, every choice and decision that we make is either right or wrong. And from experience, we soon learn that right and wrong actually mean reward or punishment. And so with that being our focus, every time I make a choice or decision, it's not, is this choice good for me? It's what is the reward or the punishment in this choice at the end? What's the consequence going to be? And as long as we focus on the reward and punishment, then the consequence or the outcome only affects me, right? It's all about me. And we live in a time and an era where it's all about me is sort of a mantra. And everyone goes into every situation thinking, okay, well, what's in it for me? It's all about me. So what's in it for me? So how do I manipulate it so that the consequence comes out in my favor, is a reward for me? The problem with this mindset or this thinking is then all of my responses and my reactions all have to do about what's in it for me. And so if you're in a relationship and you've got issues and problems that you're confronting, you can't be there and solve the issue with this thought process of it's all about me, right? You just can't do it. It won't work. So what's missing? What's missing is truth. Now, what does truth look like? When you allow truth to come into your life, and this is a spiritual or religious tangent, and I won't go down there, but when you allow truth to come into your life and you see the truth for what it is, then you automatically start to identify what is untrue, right? If you see truth, then you no longer are blinded by the veil of lies or deceit or fabrications. When you see truth and know truth, then you automatically now understand what is not true. When you get to this place and you start to realize this is truthful and this is not truthful, the division or the wedge is, it's no longer about, is this right or wrong with a reward or punishment? It's now about, if this is truthful, then I want to make the moral and or ethical choice, right? It's no longer about what's in it for me. Is this right or wrong, reward or punishment? The choice is now, however I respond, will that be a moral and ethical choice or not? And if we choose to respond truthfully, then we start to respond morally and ethically. And when our response comes from a place of moral or ethical actions and responses, then all of a sudden we realize the choices that I'm now making not only affect me, but they affect the people that I care for most. My choices now, because they're moral and ethical and not just right or wrong, become moral and ethical choices where the consequence not only benefits me, that it benefits my family, it benefits my neighbors, it benefits my community, it benefits my world. And when you live your life truthfully, you start to automatically see the consequences as a moral and ethical response instead of just a right or wrong reward or punishment. And in responding morally and ethically, truth automatically rewards that moral and ethical response. So when I'm having that difficult conversation or that struggle with a person, either at home or at work, my spouse, my significant other, my partner, a teenager, a coworker, if I choose to come from the moral and ethical place in my response, then my investige in that situation can only be a truthful one. And now, whether they go there and believe it or not, depending on where they're at in their life, is determinable. They may disagree, and we may not solve the situation, but at least coming from the truth, my moral and ethical response is truthful. And the one thing that I've come to learn and understand is people may not like your answer or your response, but if it's truthful, they will respect it. They may not agree, but they'll go away knowing that you came from the truthful place in that situation because your response was truthful, it was moral, and it was ethical. And the more you go down this path, the more you want to respond truthfully, morally, and ethically. And the more you do that, the more your spiritual grounding and growth starts to exhibit itself in your life.
I love it. You said, man, so much. And this is going to come across the wrong way, but because it's nothing easy, but kind of simplified it and made it sound somewhat easy. But that's taken you years and years and years and 22 books. And it's just what our country needs, because I do think, neurologically, unfortunately, a lot of us are letting our amygdala kind of hide the truth and making it all about me. And in listening to you, it's like, yeah, you're using more of your heart and then getting into the ethics and just a deeper meaning of seeking truth, not being right nor wrong, but getting into the core of who we are as a species, and how we've evolved, which is our relationships at the end of the day. Seeking is our primary emotion. And yeah, I love what you're sharing. I think the country needs that message today more than any other day. We're just so polarized. And if we can all just take a step back and think with our heart a little bit, it's going to be better off. And I love all the moral and ethic talk that you're sharing. And I'm hoping maybe there's a listener that might be in charge of AI. And I don't want to get off subject here, but in just listening to you, I don't know why that just keeps coming into my head. We're getting ready to go down. It's already upon us, but getting ready to go down this path of people that are, and I don't know much about technology other than how to turn on this computer and hit Zoom and get people where I can see them. But I do know that it's up on us, and the people that are writing those programs, I sure hope they have the ethical and moral lens, because it is going to totally change our perception. And add all the stuff that you just talked about. If we're not careful, other people are going to be thinking for us and forget about the morals and ethics. It's just going to go right back to how can I get mine? Which is why I love doing this show and having people share their knowledge So thank you for that. But I do want to get in. You mentioned a couple of times, relationships. I want to get out for the listener because I know you have some good insight on this. And obviously that's what we're all hoping for, whether it's a coworker, a neighbor, our significant other. But what does a healthy relationship look like? And I know you have your 4 cornerstones of that. Let's go through those if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Every relationship is always in flux, right? I mean, it's either growing or it's not, but there's things happening in it all the time. And so there are 4 cornerstones of every relationship. The first is love. Everyone is capable of giving and receiving love. The second one is approval. We all crave approval. As youngsters, we crave approval from our parents, and then we crave it from our peers at school. And as adults, we crave it from the world at large and whatever our world view may be. The third cornerstone is agenda. And this is one that a lot of people don't understand. It's sort of subliminal or missed. Everyone in your life, everyone who comes into your life has an agenda, right? They want something from you. We all have an agenda in our life. So whenever we go into a relationship, we are always looking at how that person can help me, get whatever it is that I am trying to get, what my goal, what my dream, what my ambition is. And so if you realize that everyone in your life and everyone who comes into your life has an agenda that they're trying to work with you or get from you or make happen with you, then you start to see the people who you come into life with, especially in your business life. You start to be more astute and more aware that this person is not just trying to start a relationship, be nice, do business with me. They want something specific. And if you understand that, then you can cut through a lot of the surface stuff and get to the core of why it is they're there and what it is they want. And then very quickly, because you understand that, you can decide, okay, I want to go, a little further down the path with this person, or no, this isn't for me. So agenda, even though it's veiled and sometimes hidden, is one of those. It's like an easel, right? There's 3 legs on that easel: love, approval, and agenda. The next one is also one that we don't think about a lot, and that's spiritual grounding. This is the support piece of the easel, right? This is the piece that holds up the picture of your life story. And if you don't have that spiritual grounding, if you don't have that spiritual connection with something or someone greater and outside of your life, then that support piece will never be stable, right? It will never hold up that picture of your life story the way you want it to, the way you envision it to be. And so again, this is why spiritual grounding is so important in our lives. The 5th one is the chain that links, the easel to that 3rd leg, that one that kicks out towards the back and supports the whole thing, right? And that chain is the healthy part of every relationship, and that's trust. Trust is either always implied or assumed in every relationship, whether it's at home or work, until the trust is broken. And if that chain is broken, then that 3rd support leg can never, hold up the easel. So that picture of your life can never be stable or balanced. And so those 5 are in every relationship, at home or at work. All 5 are essential in order for that picture of our life story to continue to be what it is that we plan for it to be, what we dream of it to be, and what the goals and ambitions that we have for it to be are.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. Thanks for sharing those. And you use the word essential, and we kind of got going down another path, but I always love to ask the guests, what are your life's essential ingredients? And specifically, obviously, you're very successful. You got 22 books. What does a day in the life of Branch look like? And what are the essential ingredients that you provide to yourself as nourishment, for each and every day?
Oh, Jeff, thanks. That's such an interesting question all the time, because when I talk with people, when I do workshops and things, people focus a lot of times on my success. And I certainly understand that. I certainly appreciate that acknowledgement. But much of my life was in the trenches, just like your listeners' lives, just like my workshop attendees' lives. And I've been there. I've experienced those kind of things. I've experienced the heartbreak. I've experienced the rejection, the failure, the things that life throws at us every day, I've experienced. When I decided to change my focus and change my life and change my path, I went from starting at square one and rebuilding. And I'm very blessed today that writing is all I do. I don't have a day job, so I don't have that kind of pressure, to make a living and have things to eat. I live out in the woods. I live a very isolated life. I've got chickens and dogs and cats and lots of animals around, so they take a lot of my time. I do a lot of gardening and things outside. That takes a lot of my time, but most of my time is spent writing and being on podcasts and sharing these things that I've learned and I've experienced that are common to so many people today, especially people who are, embroiled and embraced in this technology world. You said it a moment ago, technology is a great thing to have, but it can sure get out of hand very quickly. And one of the things that's scary about, the AI situation is, if Photoshop wasn't bad enough to know what is truth and what is not, AI is going to be able to manipulate things so that people believe the lie and, have proof, so to speak, of the lie. And this kind of division in our families, in our communities, in our nation, these things that continue to divide us, what we start to see is our struggle becomes so great because we think that we're isolated and we're alone, right? And we lose sight of the fact that the thing that's missing is this trust aspect. If I don't trust my spouse, then my relationship is headed in a terrible place. If I don't trust the people that I work with, then there's a lot of politicking and backstabbing and things that go on. If the trust is missing, the relationship is in danger. And whether that's at home or at work or, in the halls of justice or in the halls of Congress, if the trust is eroded, then we start to find that everybody believes they're on their own. And we, when we get back to that place where I'm isolated and alone, then my first instinct is to protect myself and the things that I hold dear. And when we get to that mindset, like I said before, our attitudes and our beliefs and our perceptions start to morph out of reality. And that can be a very dangerous situation, a very dangerous place to be. And so the importance of rebuilding trust is essential. The importance of getting spiritually grounded to something greater than yourself and outside of yourself is essential. And being honest, first with yourself, and then with the people that you hold dear, that you claim to care and love about. You have to be honest with them. If you can do those three things, trust, be honest, and be spiritually grounded, then you start to see what the world is offering me, whether or not it's in my best interest or it's not in my best interest. And without those three, we start to believe everything that we see, everything that we're told, whether it's good information, misinformation. We have no basis to prove that it's true. So it's easy for us to go down that path and be led astray. The one thing we know about the world, we're all like little Pinocchios, right? We leave home for the glitz and the glitter of the world, and we soon discover that the world is not always a nice place, a fair place, a good place. And it starts to beat us up. And so we immediately either try to find people who are in that same situation that we can share and identify with, or we start to find escape mechanisms, out of that destructive place. And so we either start running with the wrong crowd, or we start to get into things that are not healthy for us, drugs, sex, rock and roll, whatever it may be. The problem is we're out there, like prodigal children. We're out there in the world and we're embracing the world, and the world doesn't want us to be spiritually grounded. It doesn't want us to trust, and it doesn't want us to believe in anything other than what it wants us to believe and trust in. This is one of the, potential problems with AI and the way technology is being operated in our lives. And the further down that path that we go, again, the more isolated we become, the more paranoid we become, the more fearful we become, and we get like an animal cornered, right? And when you have an animal cornered, it's going to come out with a rage, with a temperament, ready to fight. And that's the problem when we are isolated in this world and we find everything that we think we need, in this tablet, in this phone. It cuts us off from the things that are really important, and that's the relationships, right? The love, the approval. Those things that are truly important to us inside become secondary. And this is how you can lead people. It happened in Germany from 1929 to 1933. Recent history, you can look at the markers and you can look at what happened, and it's being repeated not only in our country, but in countries around the world. And we already know what the results of that kind of path leads to. The problem is the more people who go down that path, the more dangerous it becomes for everybody. And that isolation mode, that thinking, that me first thinking takes over. And the only thing that comes out of that is terror and danger, despair, the things that so many mental health people are talking about now, right? We live in an age and a time where people aren't sure what to believe and what is true. And as a result, the more isolated we become, the more we withdraw from our neighbors and our community and our world of nations. The end is already been seen. George Santayana said it best, right? Those who will not learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. So, it's important that we refocus, how can I be a better person? I need to become a better me and start to trust again. And we trust first with the people we love and care about, and then work out from there. And, brotherhood and sisterhood is talked a lot about, but the only thing that's changed, in our human species over the last 5,000 or 6,000 years has been technology. We see that today. People just do not treat other people the way they want to be treated, right? The others are others for a reason, but it's probably a misinformed reason that we bought into or believe. And there's no surviving that. It's just real simple. We will not survive unless we can get grounded again in the things that truly have value, trust and love and truth. And that's a personal choice. That's the problem. We all have to make that choice for ourselves in our lives. But with podcasts like yours and others showing people that choice is so important, because that choice will determine your future. Look, our thoughts become our actions become our habits become our character, and our character determines our destiny. Our character determines our future. If my character is all about me and what's in it for me, and I can do whatever I want, regardless of the consequences or the harm that I do to others, if that's who I am in my character, then history has already shown us the results of that kind of behavior.
Yeah, no, I agree with every last word that came out, and we're definitely on the same page with that, and appreciate the heartfelt sentiment that you're putting into that. And that's what's unique. And we're both speaking the same language and trying to take action towards creating a world that gets back to truth and love and belonging and community and brothers and sisters with everybody that we cross. And I'm so excited. This Saturday, this show will have dropped already, but this Saturday, I'm so excited. We're doing our first Pizza with Purpose. And it's a gathering of bringing people to the table to have conversations about love and put them in situations to where we're going to experience that in real time. And so we're committed, C4 leaders, to going across the country. We're picking one person in each state to just basically love on. And we make pizza, I already told you, but it's on the pizza oven's on the back of a Chevy Silverado truck. And so we already have Oregon, Washington, Nevada, and Arizona lined up. And so we will be coming across the country. We're handing out books and just trying to do and take actions towards everything that you just shared and doing our part. And this isn't a naive statement, but I am going to hold this true till hopefully I go upstairs to see the big fella, that I believe all people do want what you just described. And what we try and create in bringing people together and just getting us back to what is just sitting inside us, that is just so honest and true and genuine. And if you take out all these other distractions and create the space and allow people to come to that table, I just wholeheartedly believe that table will result in just a lot of fun, love, sharing, laughter, crying, and everything else that comes with that. And by the way, a full tummy with some sourdough. So that's what we're doing. But let's get it. We're almost, I don't want to take too much of your time, but you're an amazing author. But what books would you recommend outside of yours? And we'll have the links, obviously, to your site that would just be great for people figuring out who they are, or just a book that you would recommend.
Oh, what a great question. Thanks. I very seldom get that. And I have a favorite poet who is little known, but so uniquely different in her approach and her content. And her name is Anessa Blaine, Anessa Blaine. And if you're looking for somebody who is really different, but really grounded in today's world view from a real thinker, Anessa Blaine, look her up and take a look at her books. She is outstanding in both content and presentation, and really different in her presentation than anybody else that you'll find.
I love it. I'm definitely going to check that out. We're at the end, and I always end every episode with the same way we get out. It's a great quote that I love by John Alston that says, the only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. And Branch, let's give you another 30, 40 years of doing what you're doing. You've helped people all over the world. You're on your deathbed. You're getting ready to take your last breath. what is it you want to leave behind with your readers, your listeners, family, friends, as you get ready to go home, so to say?
Wow. The one thing that I would say is consider Christ early. You know, if I tell my kids, if you take anything from me and you believe it to be true and you want to change your life, then do it now. And then you'll have 20, 30 years more of a blessed life and great things happening, you know, that I missed.
I love it. I love it. Again, listeners, we've been season 3, episode 19, Branch Isole. Check out his website, BranchIsole.com. He's got 22 great books, and he recommended his first one. And I'm got too many sheets, but I think it was God. What was the title of your first one, Branch? God, I believe. There it is. God, I believe. And thank you so much for being our guest. And Mike usually gets us out, but listeners, thank you so much. That just happened. Boom, baby. We out.